On May 19, 1986, this was a normal city, 20 million people, an ordinary Tuesday night, and then the radar lit up 21 unidentified objects simultaneously on Brazilian Air Force radar over Sao Paulo state. No flight plans, no IFF transponder response, no communication, just 21 returns. Moving, the Brazilian Air Force scrambled 8 fighter jets, F-5E Tigers, the best aircraft in the FAB fleet. They were scrambled to intercept. The objects outran every one of them. The incident was publicly confirmed by the Brazilian Air Force minister. And then the Brazilian government did something almost no government in history has done. They admitted they had no explanation. The Brazilian city where 56 people saw the same thing. Sao Paulo, May 19, 1986, 9 p.m. Brazil had returned to democratic government the previous year after 21 years of military rule. The military still controlled significant institutional resources, including the radar network. At 2100 hours, the controllers at the Integrated Air Defense Center in Brasilia began tracking something they could not explain. The radar returns showed performance characteristics that had no explanation. Speed transitions from stationary to several thousand kilometers per hour, instantaneous, 90-degree direction changes, executed without any deceleration arc. Coordinated movements between multiple objects, simultaneous, mirrored, suggesting either a single controlling intelligence or a degree of coordination that no formation flying in 1986 could achieve. The radar operators called it in. Their superiors called it in. 8 fighter jets were launched within 40 minutes. Captain Uyrange Hollanda Lima was a military intelligence officer in the Brazilian Air Force. He had spent his career investigating things that did not fit standard categories. In 1977, 9 years before the Sao Paulo incident, he had led something called Operation Prato. And what he had found during that operation was the reason he was not surprised when the radar lit up over Sao Paulo. The pilots who scrambled that night would give testimony that was unusual, even for Brazilian Air Force pilots, who are not dramatic men. They describe an object that responded to their approach. When they accelerated, the objects accelerated. When they turned to intercept, the objects turned away. One pilot described achieving a brief radar lock, and then the object was simply gone. In the cockpit, the sequence of events was recorded in the pilot's own words. He had visual contact, a steady bright light, no navigation lights, no strobe, no exhaust. He achieved HUD targeting acquisition, and then, in the words of the report, the target accelerated to a velocity inconsistent with any known aircraft and disappeared from visual range within approximately 3 seconds. The lock was lost. The object was gone. He flew back to base in silence. The press conference was held the following day. Brigadier Octavio Moreira Lima, the Brazilian Air Force minister, stood before the assembled press and said the following: "We have the radar tapes. We have the pilot reports. We have the data. The objects were real. We cannot explain them." That statement was made on May 20th, 1986. It has never been retracted. Here is what makes this case different from most UAP cases. The witness was not a farmer in a field. The witnesses were military radar operators, trained military pilots, and a government minister. The documentation was not a grainy photograph or a disputed film. The documentation was military radar data, official pilot after-action reports, and a government press conference on record. This case has better evidence than most criminal prosecutions, and almost no one outside Brazil has heard of it. 9 years before Sao Paulo, something happened in one of the most remote corners of Brazil, Colares Island, Pará State, the Amazon estuary, 1977. A small river community on an island in the river delta near Ballen. A community of fishermen, farmers, and their families. Beginning in October 1977, the residents of Colares Island began reporting something in the sky above them. What they reported was specific: a light or lights moving over the island at night, hovering, coming close to people, and leaving marks. 56 residents of Colares Island gave sworn testimony to investigators. 56 people, the same phenomenon, described with consistency that matched across witnesses who had not spoken to each other. A physician named Dr. Wellaide Cecim Carvalho was working on Colares Island at the time. She treated 41 patients. The injuries she documented were specific, consistent, and unlike any injury category in her medical training. Circular burn patterns on the skin, puncture wounds with no conventional instrument match, temporary paralysis, extreme weakness lasting days. She filed her reports. She documented her cases. The documentation exists. The Brazilian military responded. In 1977, the Brazilian Air Force launched a classified investigation called Operation Prato. The investigation was commanded by Captain Uyrange Hollanda Lima. Operation Prato produced over 500 photographs, documented military observations, official case files. It was classified immediately upon completion. For 27 years, it did not exist. During Operation Prato, Captain Hollanda Lima spent months on Colares Island. He photographed what the residents were reporting. He documented what he and his team observed directly. In his later interview, he described what he saw. He said, "I photographed things I have never been able to explain, things that should not have been there, things that did not behave according to any physical principle I was taught." He took over 500 photographs during Operation Prato. Most remain classified. The ones that were released in 2004 show lights over the Amazon River and the island. Nothing definitive, nothing that constitutes proof of anything specific. But they are photographs taken by a Brazilian Air Force officer during an official military investigation of something that was happening to civilians on that island. That they exist at all is remarkable. That they were suppressed for 27 years is more remarkable still. Dr. Carvalho's medical files documented 41 patients with the same injury pattern. The Brazilian medical establishment was not interested. The files were submitted to regional health authorities. They were received, acknowledged, filed, and never followed up. Dr. Carvalho was asked, decades later, whether she regretted reporting what she found. She said, "I am a doctor. I documented what I saw. That is what doctors are supposed to do." The radar data from the May 19th Sao Paulo incident was analyzed by military engineers. The performance characteristics of the tracked objects exceeded every known aircraft in existence in 1986. Exceeded, not approximated, not pushed the limits of, exceeded. The tracked objects demonstrated instantaneous direction reversal, speed transitions that defied the physics of any known propulsion system, coordinated simultaneous maneuvers between separate objects. The engineers who analyzed the data produced a report. The report concluded, unknown. Here is the context that explains the suppression. In 1977, Brazil was under military dictatorship. Information was controlled. Civilian reports of unexplained aerial phenomena in a remote Amazon island community were not the kind of story the government wanted circulating. By 1986, Brazil had returned to democratic government, but institutional habits do not change overnight. The classified files from 1977 remained classified. The Sao Paulo incident of 1986 was acknowledged because it was impossible to deny 8 fighter jets and a government minister. Colares remained buried until 2004. In 2022, the Brazilian National Congress held formal hearings on UAP incidents. Former military officers testified on record. The incidents of 1977 and 1986 were entered into the official congressional record. This is not a fringe topic in Brazil. It is a matter of official legislative inquiry. In 1997, Captain Uyrange Hollanda Lima gave a filmed interview. He had been out of the Air Force for years. He spoke for 4 hours. He described, in specific operational detail, what he and his team had witnessed during Operation Prato. He described direct encounters. He described what was in the classified photographs. He described what the military had concluded privately, in contrast to what it had said publicly. He had carried this for 20 years, and he had decided he was done carrying it. He said the objects his team observed and photographed on Colares Island were not aircraft of any known type. He said the interaction between the objects and the island residents was not random. He said the military investigation concluded that the phenomenon was real, was physical, was capable of injuring human beings, and was not of any terrestrial origin they could identify. He said this was the official private conclusion of the Brazilian Air Force. Not a claim, not an opinion. The official private conclusion. For months after giving that interview, Captain Uyrange Hollanda Lima died. The official cause was suicide. He was 46 years old. He had been in excellent health. His family disputes the suicide finding. The investigation was closed within weeks. The city of Sao Paulo continued. It continues today. 20 million people below this sky. The same sky that had 21 objects above it on May 19, 1986. The radar is still running. The jets are still on alert. The files are not fully declassified. And the question remains exactly where Brigadier Moreira Lima left it in 1986. Unanswered, Brazil has given us the most extensively documented government-confirmed UAP incidents in the world. The question is not whether these events happened. The evidence for that question is settled. The question is why the rest of the world is not paying attention. Subscribe if you want to keep asking that question.